Absolutely. Let's talk about some NBA. And we had some very interesting games. And that Sixers game that was your Levy lock, Brett, it closed out. But the Sixers, they're now going to be without Joel Embiid for at least game one and game two because of an orbital bone fracture and a concussion. That has me a little worried, Brett. How worried would you be for the Sixers with that news?
So he's going to be reevaluated after game two, before game three, when the series comes back to Philadelphia. I imagine that by that time the concussion symptoms will have subsided and he'll be able to play with a face mask, Higgins. So, look, I think he'll be effective. I think he'll be a good player. Face mask might bother him a little bit, but he'll fight through it in the postseason. And yeah, I'm a little concerned. This is now a guy with a thumb injury and a face injury, both pretty severe. So, look, it's not an ideal situation for the Sixers, but you play the hand you're dealt, Higgins. The Heat are beat up as well, to be fair. They've got Jimmy Butler dealing with some stuff. They've got Caleb Martin and PJ Tucker and Kyle Lowry all dealing with stuff as well. So, I use stuff because I can't go down to all 5 injury problems on them off the top of my head, Higgins. But, like, one's a hamstring and another one's an ankle and something
Both
with
teams
a
are definitely
quad.
banged up.
Yeah, exactly. So these guys are all dealing with some injury problems. I think it's really unfortunate that the Sixers will be without Embiid for the first 2 games of the series, though.
It's obvious where the weight falls, though. It falls onto James Harden, and whether he's able to rebound from his kind of cold end of the regular season, and then Toronto guarded him and contained him pretty well. James Harden's going to be the difference maker for the Sixers on whether or not they can win this series. And to me, I don't know if they necessarily have to win either of the first 2 games without Joel Embiid. If they can split those without him, that is a big move for the Sixers. But if Harden can just get back into the swing of things, get back into a hot hand a little bit, that'll put the Sixers in a much better place. You mentioned how the Heat are injured as well. And so I look at these semifinals matchups odds, Brett, and the Sixers at plus 260, it just seems like good value to me, even with Joel Embiid's injury status. If he comes back in game 3, I think that's superb value. If, let's say, the swelling doesn't go down or there's something that prevents him with the concussion protocol from getting back by game 3, obviously the Heat at minus 350 are the better advantage there. I'm banking on the fact that Joel Embiid is going to be back for game 3, and I'm also banking on the fact that James Harden is going to have to show up now, and without Joel Embiid being option 1A to James Harden's 1B, we've seen what Harden can do when he is option 1A, and he's clear-cut option 1A. And the Rockets, he was able to do that for a long time. Can he do that in Philadelphia, though? That's the question.
Yeah, Higgins, I gotta be honest. Don't love that bet, but I'm rooting for you.
Okay.
I read the series differently. I think Miami's the favorite in the series for a reason. And I think the Embiid injury, 80% of Embiid is better than most, but, Miami's just got this thing, Higgins, Heat culture that I really buy into. So, I think a beat up Embiid. Harden has not looked very good this year in a Sixers uniform. So, we'll see what happens. You certainly are reading it right if you believe Embiid comes back and is the difference maker that we think he can be. But I'd be nervous that he might be coming back down 0-2 already.
That very well may be the case. I think that James Harden's going to have to step it up, and I think he will in at least one of those games. It'll be interesting to see. You're right, the Heat obviously are the favorites with where we're looking at this right now with the injury news. What's interesting to me, though, Brett, is if you take a look at the Celtics-Bucks semifinals matchup, because they already played Game 1 on Sunday afternoon, and the Bucks won, so they have a 1-game series lead. Game 2 is going to be in Milwaukee as well, and if you look at the line, the Bucks are only minus 125 favorites over the Celtics to win this series. Now, yes, the Bucks are without Chris Middleton because of his MCL sprain, but I believe that Giannis is going to still be able to come out of this series. And with an injured Joel Embiid, to me, honestly, I think the Bucks still might be the favorite to come out of the East. I understand what we saw from Boston and that they are riding high off of that Brooklyn series, but I don't know if they can do that again against Giannis. I just don't.
Yeah, so this game's actually in Boston, game 2, Higgins.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, they're in Boston, but yeah, I think very high likelihood the Celtics bounce back in game 2. To be honest, I don't love the 4.5, which is actually why I'm taking the Bucks side plus 4.5. I think, pretty decent shot. The Bucks could win again. But 4.5 points seems like a lot for Boston. So I would say this. I probably like Boston to win the game. I probably like Milwaukee to keep it within 2 possessions.
Mm-hmm. And that's a Tuesday game. I like that spread at plus 4.5. Grabbing that early line, I think, might favor you well, Brett, as we get through Monday, and it might get a little closer. I'm looking at the Monday series, though, and the opener between the Sixers and the Heat, and I'm also going to put my money where my mouth is there. Sixers plus 7.5. It just feels like everyone's fading the Sixers because they don't have Joel Embiid. And maybe it's rightfully so. Maybe I am playing contrarian and I'm in a small minority here. But 7.5 points feels like a lot. I feel like James Harden's being overlooked, and with his back against the wall in this type of situation, I expect him to step up. And even if the Sixers don't win, to at least keep it close. That's 4 possessions.
Yeah, I mean, you're betting big on Harden here. Look, Harden's been a really great player during his NBA career. He has come up short in a lot of big playoff moments.
Yes, he has. Yes, he has.
I mean, feel free. God bless you. I think 7.5 is a big number as well, but you will not catch me backing these Sixers right now. Now, that's not to say they can't win. That's not to say they can't be competitive. That's not to say Harden can't play well. I just think, if something happens 70% of the time, that means 30% of the time it doesn't happen, but 30% is also the minority.
And maybe my reasoning is wrong, but my pick is right. And it's not James Harden that improves, but Tyrese Maxey steps up like we've seen him time again this year.
Yeah, it could be Maxey. Maybe Tobias Harris plays really well. So you're right, Higgins. There are plenty of other people on this team who can step up.
Absolutely. The Mavericks-Suns game also on Monday, that should be an interesting one. And then the Warriors-Grizzlies on Tuesday, Brett. That was an interesting game down the stretch on Sunday night. The Warriors were able to escape with a 1-point victory, but Ja Morant had an opportunity with a layup at the end that just missed. I mean, the Grizzlies nearly had that.
Yeah, that was a very exciting game down the end. Jaren Jackson Jr. was not missing shots the entire second half, Higgins. He was unbelievable from 3, making them all. So, look, we had the exciting finish with Klay Thompson missing a few free throws and then getting the, game-sealing defensive closeout, whatever you want to call it, contest on Ja Morant on that layup. So a lot of highs, a lot of lows in this game. Draymond Green was ejected early on a questionable call. So lots of stuff happening in that Memphis game 1. Lots of excitement. Jordan Poole had a 30-point game for the Warriors, Higgins. So I look forward to watching the rest of this series. It's going to be a blast.
I do too. I mean, Ja Morant really was able to pick it back up in the second half of that series against Minnesota, and he came into this game 1 just steamrolling. I mean, he had over 30 points. It'll be interesting, though, Brett. If I look at who I expect to be in the NBA Finals now after watching the beginning of these playoffs, Bucks and Warriors at plus 450. I'm not going to take it, but that interests me. I could see Giannis versus Steph in this finals.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, I'm not gonna predict the finals this early, Higgins.
Okay.
I'm gonna keep my hot takes cool today.